every movie has random trivia. And here at Trivial Theater, I explore some of these movies and the random circumstances that make them the weird creations that we love. This week's movie involves a flying pizza, a really over-the-top asshat, and an animatronic Sasquatch with a New York accent. That should make for a pretty interesting combination. I promise not to hold you in suspense any longer. This is 1992's Munchie. We start the only way you should really ever start a movie: a classic truck, a blow-up vampire, and some killer driving. Set to the docile tones of Dom DeLuise delivering a classically funny line.
Are we there yet?
I could talk more about this part, but it's basically an extended car chase that features the observant line,
I love sirens. They really get your attention.
which leads to the hasty disposal of a talking chest down a bottomless pit. All of this leads me to the conclusion that this guy might not be that fond of Munchie. Elsewhere, we get tons of chattering teeth, and the combination of Roger Corman and Jim Wynorski at the helm. According to the following surroundings, we find ourselves in math class, where you can almost immediately tell who our main character is. We can also tell who he's pining after. After the first in a series of daydreams, we find him in a classic lunch scenario. Oh, the endless joy of elementary lunch. But in a twist, lunch is on the principal. Well, that was sure nice of him. Unfortunately, his next words proved to be a little less nice.
I'll be watching you. One more infraction, and you know what happens.
This chilling run-in leads Gage to imagine a high noon showdown, an execution, the devil, and a Revolutionary War-era firing squad with period-accurate guns. But it turns out just to be the threat of a suspension, which may or may not be worse than a Revolutionary War-era firing squad. On his way home, Gage sees what could be the result of convenience store burritos, followed up by a very Rick and Morty moment, with Gage's eccentric friend, Dr. Crookshanks. After pondering,
You think the neighborhood would object to a new nuclear reactor here?
we meet Gage's mom and her boyfriend. And if you ever want to know what passed for asshole attire in the 90s, all you gotta do is look at this guy. Douchebag McGee plays tonsil hockey with Gage's mom right in front of him, and Gage daydreams he was dead. We find out he has an affinity for candles and is visited by all the characters in the movie, acknowledging how they've wronged him in one way or another. These include an interesting discovery by the school bully,
I threw sunshine against the wall and now he's dead.
and a confession of bigamy.
I've been arrested for bigamy. Your mother recognized me on America's Most Wanted.
Followed up by wise words from the mortician.
I'm sorry, sir. You'll have to be quiet. You are dead, after all.
Back in the real world, he wanders into an abandoned mine and finds a mysterious chest. As you do with any unknown object, he opens it. After trumpets and sparklers, Munchie, who is an ugly SOB, pops up. I'm now starting to wonder what I got myself into with this movie. In a bedroom that has all the makings of a bedroom, but I don't quite believe it's a bedroom, Gage learns more about Munchie and they order a pizza from an actual Italian place. And Munchie wins brownie points for that. Thus begins one of the most famous scenes in the movie. The butcher knife wielding chef that chases after the pizza is a nice touch too. As they eat, Gage explains what he wants, and Munchie promises to make it so while awkwardly eating a slice of pizza. Later, Munchie mentions wanting to drive to Cleveland, and I have to wonder if it's to see Howard the Duck, cause those two would have a hell of a time together. Anyway, they call it a night, and I'm left wondering if it's his snore that got Munchie tossed off a cliff. Back in school, we get more reminders of Gage's heavy crush on Andrea and the very weird fashion choices of 90s tween bullies. In this case, golden rings and preppy shoulder sweaters. As Munchie hacks a computer to change Gage's grades, he overhears something I gotta agree with.
I could have sworn you buzzed me.
Hey, what's going on here?
This leads to the steamy romance segment of this kids movie, broadcast to the whole school, where the kids inadvertently learn the meaning of cringe with pet names like
Bunny cakes,
Snooky Poo.
lovey lumps,
Lamikins.
Honey muffin,
Snuggy Bear.
angel thighs,
summer squash.
Oopsie Doodle.
and facepalms ensue. They're discovered, and although Lincoln isn't amused, Washington is kinda into it. There's an appropriate musical stinger, and I get the sense that Snooky Poo is going to need a few minutes. Munchie continues his work, leaving one bully in the shower with underwear on his head, and the other bully exposing his boxers in a break from the traditional storyline of Romeo and Juliet. Elsewhere, Gage's mom's boyfriend wants to become Gage's mom's fiance, and he brought champagne and an ugly tie to propose. Unfortunately, his cork is pulled just a little early, leading to Kathy's polite laughter. Munchie gets him out of the house and throws a big party featuring people, mainly Andrea, food, and booze. For a kid's party. Honestly, for all the magic he possesses, I was expecting something a little more high energy. Munchie boozes us up and the kids dance, as this guy eyes them weirdly. Honestly, what's up with that look? Kathy and Elliot come home to see the party, and Kathy pulls a classic 90s mom scream that automatically puts a stop to everything. All Elliot can do is prove to be a douche canoe as he threatens Gage. Luckily, the day is saved by a passed out Munchie. Elliot proves to be a twat waffle and bags Munchie up for study and dissection. He's stopped through a combination of a shot to the face and tripping over nothing, which proves he's still an asshat. Gage and the doc grab Munchie and run into his classic Jeep, followed closely by Elliot in his 90s sedan. Thus begins the epic car chase segment of the movie and the classic line,
That guy's a pain in the bumper.
Munchie finally remembers he has magic and makes the Jeep fly, which causes Elliot to run into the Winchell's donut shop, which I gotta say has a shit ton of donuts for this particular time of night. The cops take him away for crashing into a donut shop and acting a fool. As Elliot is driven away, Munchie flips him the bird and the day is saved. We head to the airport where Doc and Munchie are headed off on an adventure. Gage, Andrea, and their parents come to see them off. And this implied family unit is a tad weird, especially considering Gage's feeling for Andrea. But forget about that, Munchie and the Doc hijack a plane and sail off into the blue. He's such a lovable scamp, and I'm sure his shenanigans will ensue in the sequel, Munchie Strikes Back. In the grand tradition of Troll 2 and Halloween 3, Munchie is known as a sequel, without being even remotely a sequel. It stars Lonnie Anderson, Andrew Stevens, Dom DeLuise, and Jennifer Love Hewitt in her film debut. It also features a cameo by Angus Scrimm, who is best known as the Tall Man in the Phantasm series. Scrimm was a constant in director Jim Wynorski's movies, starring in Lost Empire, Chopping Mall, and Transylvania Twist. This was Wynorski's only attempt at a kids movie, and just like Howard the Duck, it definitely sits as one of those that may leave you questioning how this is PG. But you could ask that of a lot of movies of this era. It definitely follows in the style of kid movies with adult undertones, that you see even today in movies like Shrek. I tell you, the innuendos come in hard and fast. See what I did there? Munchie was definitely not made to be Disney-esque, and the fact that it was made by the director of Chopping Mall isn't that much of a stretch. But I don't think that takes away from the enjoyability of it. If anything, I think it appeals to kids because it isn't tossing out lessons. It's just set up to be good kid gets revenge on bullies and adults that make their lives miserable in humorous and relatively uncomplicated ways. The simplicity is great for a lot of stuff, but it does leave some glaring plot holes, and the implied ending that maybe Gage's mom and Andrea's dad could start something, especially given how Gage feels, could be a little scary. If I have to say anything that really took me out of the moment, it was Munchie himself. On a scale of the late 80s, early 90s animatronic movies I've seen, Munchie is about a halfway point between Garbage Pail Kids and Howard the Duck. Munchie does have a decent range of motion, but you can see how hard it was for the puppet to keep up with Dom DeLuise's style of delivery. It just wasn't expressive enough to be very accurate. On a side note, the attention to detail on the little gremlin's attire was impressive. I'm pretty sure he had more costume changes than the entire cast. So as this one started, I really didn't know if I was gonna like it or not. Even though the opening scene offered a car chase and a blow-up Dracula, it lacked something. It was clear this guy got more than he bargained for with Munchie, but it felt longer than it needed to be. In fact, I feel like the movie could have started with Gage at school and we really wouldn't have missed anything. We had to be reminded by Elliot and the principal what a troublemaker Gage was, even though there was no evidence of it in most cases. The trouble that Munchie supposedly caused for Gage didn't feel like anything that big. In fact, because of Munchie's continued shenanigans, everything turned out peachy, with the exception of the hijacked plane, since we really don't know where they ended up. You look at a lot of kid-type movies of the era, and there is a sense of needing to sit back and not worry about plot holes. And on that point with Munchie, I'm kinda torn. On one side, it's easy to overanalyze what's meant to be a funny, stupid movie where kids win easily over evil adults who underestimate them. But on the other, there's the question of just lazy writing. I think this one falls into the former category. It keeps a very light tone that tells you to calm your face and just enjoy some slapstick, dad-level jokes, and a flying pizza with anchovies. Jim Wynorski is a guy that makes schlocky horror movies, and I really believe this is him making a schlocky kids movie, but he sort of forgot to keep a little bit more of the kids part in mind. As long as you go in with that mentality, it's a super fun ride. It's easy to get really cynical on a movie like this, and a lot of the stuff that I've read about this movie was, but I'm not going to speak down to that because in some cases those criticisms are justified. But that in mind, it's still a funny movie that doesn't concern itself with lessons. It's just a fantasy tale with an over-the-top scamp of a magical creature and maybe just a little bit too much Snooki Poo. Special thanks to the Super Media Bros podcast for the recommendation. You gents handed me one that I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did. Please check out their amazing Cult Cinema Showdown, an incredible series that's sure to wow you if you like what I do here. You'll find their links in the description below. So what do you think? Suggestions for movies, trivial questions, comments, ratings, and the ability to fly a broke-ass Jeep like a total boss would be appreciated. Thank you so very much for watching.